Howdy folks, and welcome back. Last we left Constantine, she had just finished up quite a few different quests for a bunch of the different scholars in the College of Winterhold. She learned that she was a big fan of a couple of them, mostly Tolfdir, but that the majority appeared to be rather stuck up, let's say. Her current objective now is to go and turn in a sword to an individual that had requested it be enchanted. Why they couldn't just get a courier, she's unsure, but she's happy to get out of the cold for a little bit. This is where we're going to catch up with Constantine, now currently heading towards the inn to get the carriage driver to take her to Morthal. Now this is a hold she hasn't been in, but it was the closest to her destination. Having arrived in the inn, Constantine went straight for the driver. She wanted out of the cold as soon as possible. According to her map, Morthal was right smack in the center of the swamplands. Between the swamps or the blistering cold, she would absolutely take the swamps, though she wasn't necessarily pleased about it per se. Morthal felt one of those drive-by towns where if you blink, you'll pass it. At the same time, though, she's never been, and it could be an important spot moving forward. Having arrived, she seems to have shown up at a rather interesting time. It seems an angry mob has appeared right outside the Jarl's longhouse, with the inhabitants getting irate about something. They don't actually say, or at the very least to an outsider like Constantine, she has no idea what they're talking about. She noticed that the steward is the one that appears to be taking the complaints, and the Jarl's nowhere to be seen, which seems a little weird, but who knows. She's going to keep an eye on this situation, though. Whatever it might be, could make her some money. She thought about heading immediately out, but something about the commotion caught her attention. It's not usual to see a mob that size outside of a Jarl's longhouse. Usually if there's any complaints, it's done in an orderly fashion in front of the Jarl. The local inn most likely has the answers that she searches for. She also noticed that the ground had been littered with good alchemical components, so she grabbed some of them, and out of the corner of her eye, she actually noticed that there was a burned out house. It actually looked freshly burned. She found a wandering mercenary willing to accompany her, but Ulf is enough, and realistically, she has no desire to actually hire anyone. She'd rather have a companion over a mercenary. She does find the innkeeper, who gives her a couple of interesting rumor notes. Nothing too exciting, but she was very willing to talk about the burned house.
Here, take a look at this.
Right as she was actually about to ask about the burned house, Constantine got sidetracked by a weird conversation in the corner.
My apologies, my lady. Perhaps you could use the dagger to threaten timid men who are too polite to smack your bottom.
Aye, now you're talking.
Just... what? Constantine didn't really know what to do in that situation. She wanted to ask about the burning house. She also kind of wanted to get out of there, so she just casually read some of the notes she got, and then she left the inn. She would ask about the house later. For now, she just needed anything else to think about that wasn't using a dagger to threaten someone to slap their butt. Anyway, she remembers that one of the keepers of the Razor is actually here in Morthal. It was the lumberyard worker, and she goes to find him. As she approaches him, she recognizes him as one of the individuals who was at the complaint session in front of the longhouse. And she actually asks him about it, getting some peculiar information.
Trust you saw the house that burned down. Peculiar bit of business that was. And that's on top of noises from the marsh in the night. Tales of monsters. Now this wizard in our midst. What's a man to do if he can't look to his Jarl for help?
She then asks about the piece of the Razor, with his attitude changing dramatically. He seems to not care much for the mythic Dawn, the Razor, or anything about it in general, but it seemed important to his family a century ago, so it's important to him. Sort of.
Keeping that Razor safe from a dead colt. As far as I care, it can stay locked in my house.
He wasn't willing to part with it, but while Constantine absolutely could have stolen it, which was her gut reaction, or beat him up for the key, she thought it might just be better to pay the man. She gets what she wants, he gets extra gold for the mill, and she gains a potential ally in understanding the mystery with this house. She enters the home, and while she may not have just outright stolen the key or the razor part, she is still absolutely going to steal a few things from the man's house. I mean, her nature is her nature, and she's not gonna change. She ends up finding the razor and a few other trinkets. As she's stealing a few things, though, something appears in her brain or her mind? She's not sure what to make of it. It was definitely a map of Nern. She recognized different provinces, and she unconsciously also knew to go to a very certain spot in Skyrim, but where that place was or what she was actually going to find there was unknown to her. Oh well, yet another thing to add to her ever-growing pile of weird encounters she needs to deal with. Constantine decided to forget about the delivery mission for now and was much more curious about this whole burned house mystery. So rather than just asking locals, she made a beeline for the Jarl's longhouse. If anybody knew, and more importantly might hire her for a job, it'd be the Jarl. As always though, she did get sidetracked and checked out the local bounty board. Turns out there was a bounty on a certain bandit, and the going rate for these bounties are always good, so she took it in case she ended up in that area. Always good to go back to your roots.
You are the harbinger of the companions. It is my honor to stand before
Oh, she really needs to do something about that harbinger title. She likes the prestige, but none of the responsibility. She enters the longhouse and immediately goes to the Jarl, who's sitting in her chair. Constantine, not really being one to beat around the bush too much, directly asks about the burned down house, and then asks several follow-up questions about the situation. And what she is told is wild.
Hrogar blames his wife for spilling bear fat in the fire. Many folk think he set the fire himself. Lust can make a man do the unthinkable. The ashes were still warm when he pledged himself to Alva. On rumor and gossip? No, but you, a stranger, might find the truth for us. Sift through the ashes that others are too fearful to touch. See what they tell you. Should you prove him
So,
guilty
to
or innocent,
Constantine's best knowledge, so far there is a concern that Hrogar actually burned his house and killed his wife and daughter inside so that he could marry some new woman, Alva, apparently.
Hrogar's fate
The whole
is
thing
in
feels just like a small-town rumor mill, but if there is any truth behind it, she would get to the bottom of it. Also because she's being paid for it now, which is a huge win in her book. First things first, though, she needs to actually go to the house and sort of sift through those ashes. As she comes up to the house, the first place she's going to check is, of course, the fireplace. This is where the alleged fire started. But the wooden beam above it doesn't even appear touched by flame, so Hrogar is lying or his memory's off. Right next to it, though...
Who's there?
And that's when the little girl's ghost appeared, catching Constantine completely off guard.
Supposed to talk to strangers.
She composes herself again and speaks with the little girl's ghost, who claims to be Helgi,
Smoke woke
the
me
daughter
up.
of Hrogar.
I was hot and I was scared, so I hid. Then it got cold and dark. I'm not scared anymore. But I'm lonely. Will you play with me?
Constantine isn't one to play with ghosts, but assuming this ghost is truly Helgi, then she may get some useful information out of her.
We have to wait for nighttime, though. The other one is playing too, and she can't come out until then. I can't
What
tell
other
you.
one?
She might hear me. She's so close. If you can find me first, I can tell you.
The mystery deepens. So, the fire was absolutely started. By who, though, we're still unsure of. She does also know that there is someone else in the picture, but they can only come out at night. While Constantine really wants it to not be vampires, it's probably vampires. Her next goal was to actually go and speak with Hrogar and see if she could glean anything from him, though she actually ran into Alva
Well, aren't
first.
you the pretty one?
Constantine
I bet all
wasn't
the
sure
men
what
chase
to
after
feel
you.
around her, but safe was not at the top of her list.
Try to keep to myself.
Hrogar, on the other hand,
Alva's
was an
been
interesting
good to me ever
case.
since-
Constantine
well,
asked him a
since the
couple of
fire.
follow-up questions about the fire, and his responses were
That's true,
concerning.
but I'm in a new house now, a better house. Yeah, that was a shame. But now Alva takes care of me, and I take care of her. Really? How nice. I have Alva to take care of now. I don't need Helgi anymore. Ah, I see. Whatever happened before doesn't matter. Now, what did you say you wanted?
It's hard to figure out if Hrogar meant what he was saying or if he was bewitched. It's like he was enthralled, yet there was no obvious signs of enthrallment to Constantine. Even weirder, though, was that Alva was sort of just there the whole time. The thing is, though, Hrogar's eyes actually appeared clear and not really fogged over like that of a thrall's. There honestly may be no mystery here at all. Hrogar may just be an awful person. But Constantine was going to put that to bed soon enough. She'd talk with Helgi's ghost, and what better place to find a ghost than the cemetery above the house. As she approached, a woman in black was waiting by the freshly dug up grave. Unsure of the threat, Constantine was very careful. That's when the figure turned around, drew her blade, and the unmistakable orange glow of eyes solidified in Constantine's mind that this was a vampire problem. Killing her, Helgi's ghost reappeared, and with the other gone, she must have felt safe enough to talk with Constantine about what happened. She even named the vampire, Laylette, though that name means nothing to Constantine right now.
She kissed me on the neck, and I got so cold that the fire didn't even hurt. Laylette thought she could take me and keep me, but she can't. I'm all burned up. I'm tired.
According to Helgi,
I'm gonna
Laylette is the
sleep
one who
for a
caused the
while
fire,
now.
and attempted to convert Helgi into a vampire. While that part of the mystery has been solved, it still doesn't solve the Hrogar situation and explain his callousness towards his family. Constantine does choose to burn the corpse, though. If there's one vampire, there's usually a coven close by, and it's best to not allow reanimation. The next step, though, is to actually deal with the very real vampire problem. They rarely work alone, and someone had to have turned Laylette. It's also important to figure out exactly who she was and if they have any surviving family. They could maybe give a little more insight. The best place to go to right now is finally back to the inn and to talk with the innkeeper. Having returned to the inn, the first person Constantine runs into is Alva herself. Constantine really doesn't like this woman's whole demeanor. She feels like she's being spied on, but also she doesn't have the orange eyes of a vampire. Could she hide them somehow? Or is Constantine just being too paranoid for her own good? In any case, she actually almost slit Alva's throat right there and then, but I thought
Steward
better
asked
of
you to
it.
Look into the fire. What a display of color. There ain't much to offer.
Finally
but if you
speaking
want
with
a
the
place dry to
innkeeper,
spend the-
Constantine
now
does
there's
not
a
mince
mystery.
words and immediately
She ran
wants to
away
know
when
about
the war
Laylette.
started.
And the
Her
innkeeper
husband,
was
Thonir,
willing to spill.
devastated. No note or nothing. I'm pretty sure she up and joined the Stormcloaks.
Hrogar doesn't have to know if we sit together.
And what she learned was fascinating. First off, it seems Laylette has a surviving husband that Constantine can go and speak to, because Laylette allegedly just up and joined the Stormcloaks. Constantine isn't sure what side of the Civil War Morthal is on, but up and leaving for the military without leaving a note is suspicious in and of itself.
He's always so
Constantine
tired.
needs to find Laylette's
I
husband.
need someone with a little
As she was making to leave, though, she saw Alva attempting, and failing, to seduce the men in the inn. The men rebuff her as they believe she's with Hrogar, and while they don't agree with how quickly the match occurred, they do appear to value that monogamy. This is just sort of another little interesting tally to put against Alva in Constantine's mind. Alright, it was time to find the husband of Laylette. She found him, and it seems he was just outside,
Have you seen Laylette?
although it didn't
Have
appear
you
that this
seen
is
my
an
wife?
uncommon thing for him to be doing. Maybe he's hoping for Laylette to come back.
By the gods, this can't be
Constantine
happening.
broke the news about his wife, and he did not take it well and bolted for the graveyard. He found the pile of ash, And
She's dead.
admittedly,
He's
Constantine
disappeared.
did feel a little bad
a
that there was no
vampire.
body for him to bury, but she did what she thought was right, considering the circumstances.
Leolette. I thought she left to join the Stormcloaks. Oh, my poor Leolette. She began to spend a lot of time with Alva. Yet just a week before, she despised her. In fact, the night she disappeared, she was supposed to meet Alva. Alva told me
Interesting.
later
So it seemed
that
Alva
she
was the
never
last
showed
one to
up.
see Leylette
I
alive.
never got to tell her goodbye.
Alva. What is that woman hiding?
You think Alva? But that means... Ye gods, you think Alva is a vampire?
Constantine isn't going to
No,
come right out
you're
and
wrong.
say that Alva's a
You must
vampire
be
because,
wrong.
again,
Leylette may have
no
met her
orange
fate out in
eyes,
the
but
marsh.
there is a large
I
amount of proof
refuse
pointing
believe
to that
Alva
in her
had
mind.
anything to do with this. There is no way you can prove it to the Jarl.
Thonir did have a point, though. There
hope
wasn't
Alva is
any
not
proof.
what you think.
Yet. Constantine was now going to do what she felt she should have done a long while back and break into Alva's house. See what she's hiding. Constantine heads over to Alva's house and picks the lock relatively easily. The locks in Morthal suck, and she slips right on in, none the wiser. Upon entering the house, it seems normal enough. Nothing screams, "Vampire lives here!" But she guesses if you're trying to hide yourself, a sign isn't the best course of action. She did have a copy of Immortal Blood, but it's a fairly common book, not really damning evidence. She does steal some money, though. And Constantine is never going to say no to a fancy little dagger. It'll actually probably look really good in the museum. She'll have to put it up later. That's when she turns towards the basement. If anything nefarious was going to be somewhere, it would be down there. And lo and behold, sitting right in front of Constantine's face, is the coffin of a vampire. You really didn't have to be that smart to figure that out. The markings on the coffin were enough to designate this as a vampire's coffin, but the whole stairs and pedestal thing with the coffin on top was very gaudy, very vampire-like. So that really sealed the deal for her. It was official. Alva was a vampire, so she had to die. And scarier still, though, she could hide the color of her eyes, which really frightened Constantine because how many other vampires out there are able to do that? And then she found exactly the proof she was looking for that she could take to the Jarl. I mean, outside of the entire murder vampire basement. A journal that describes how Alva became a vampire and what her plan in Morthal was. It mentions the fire and how Leylette wasn't supposed to do that, and how Hrogar was nothing more than a thrall to protect the coffin. It also mentions a coven just out of town in a cave. And most interestingly, at least to Constantine, was she was mentioned. Not by name, but that someone was looking into the matter, meaning it's turning into a game of cat and mouse. Who kills who first? It was time to leave the basement, and she needed to make it to the Jarl. She had all the evidence she needed to prove that Alva was the one responsible for pretty much everything, and she wanted to see if she could get the Jarl's blessing, maybe more so along the lines of getting paid, to take out the vampire coven. She did have to be incredibly careful, though. The journal had mentioned that a big portion of the reason that Alva was here in Morthal was to try to seduce the guards and convert them. She didn't know which guards were or weren't seduced. And as she's making her way to the longhouse, a guard starts to walk up on her. Thankfully, though, it does appear that he was either not seduced or not told to kill her, so she walks into the longhouse. Originally, Constantine wasn't going to wake the Jarl, but with Alva knowing about Constantine, and Constantine now knowing about the Coven, time was of the essence. This she knew. So she shook the Jarl awake and told her everything.
Can't go making accusations like that without proof. So it's true, the traitorous bitch. Morthal owes you a debt. Here, you were promised a reward for solving the crime, but I need one more favor from you. Morthal is still in danger. The journal mentions Movarth, a master vampire I thought was destroyed a century ago. I'll gather together some able-bodied warriors to clean out Movarth's lair. They'll be waiting outside for you to lead them.
And thus, a new job for her. Not only was she paid for finding the culprit to the fire, but she was also given, and hopefully attached with a rather large purse, given the go-ahead to hunt down and slaughter the Coven. Constantine searched around the Jarl's longhouse, seeing if there was anything of value, but if there was, she didn't find it, and anyways, she had a job that she needed to get done. Word travels fast in Morthal, apparently. Outside the longhouse, there was a militia group ready and waiting to attack. This annoyed Constantine. She knew she would have a militia with her, but these were untrained fighters going up against a centuries-old vampire. Why couldn't they just get a couple guards? Whatever. They were going to get slaughtered, but oh well, she commended their bravery. As she ran to the cave, she could feel the crisp air. The colder weather, coupled with the marsh, led to a pleasurable temperature. She could hear her heart pounding with every step. She was going to kill her first master vampire. She'd killed many vampires before, but this would be her first master vampire. She would truly be wiping out an entire Coven's bloodline. She smiled. She liked that thought. The skulls and blood were a pretty good signifier that she was getting close. She'd be as quiet as she could be for the time being. She didn't want to alert any of the vampires that she was showing up. As she got closer, she couldn't actually hear the footsteps of the militia behind her. Either they turned coward, or she had truly outsprinted them. Honestly, it really didn't matter to her. The less people she had to deal with, the quieter she'd be able to be. Spiders were guarding the entrance, nothing too difficult, and they went down quickly enough. Movarth is going to have to try a lot better than that to stop her. She moves through efficiently but quietly, dealing with a thrall who is sitting down. Where even are all the vampires, Constantine thought to herself. What sort of master vampire is this guy? She hasn't even come across any of the bloodsuckers. She even came across one of the lair's body pits, where all the victims they had killed had been dumped off. And yet again, just a thrall. And wow, our thrall is truly stupid. It knew where she was, she misfires, and it goes in the direction where the arrow landed. It's just not very intelligent. Then again, what do you expect from a thrall? She was getting annoyed until she heard voices just a little ways down the hallway. As she got closer, those voices got louder and louder until finally she came across what can only be described as the banquet hall. But it did have a few vampires and Movarth seated up front. Now it was time to wipe out the bloodline. She had to be smart, though. She didn't know exactly what would happen when she opened up the fight, so she used some spells she learned to lay a trap. Though this magic was relatively new to her, and she didn't actually realize she could only lay one trap at a time. That being the case, she took her bow and opened fire. It was now time to kill all of them. And Constantine was not impressed with Movarth's performance. His lackeys went down like paper, and he seemed just confused and senile. It felt more like she was putting an old man out of his misery rather than fighting a centuries-old vampire with centuries of experience. Though, she guesses that really it is just one and the same. And with that, Movarth is dead. Anticlimactic, really, but now she needed to find Alva. Through all of this, there was no way she was going to be getting out of this alive. Interestingly enough, there were still some thralls that were up even with Movarth dead, which leads her to believe that there is still one or two vampires still up and kicking. With that thrall's death and nobody else in the vicinity, it seemed like Constantine's best plan was to loot everything she possibly could. There had to be some goodies around here somewhere. There was no way a centuries-old vampire was going to have absolutely no loot. Movarth himself actually had some interesting robes on him, and she nicked them, hoping that they would sell for a good amount of gold. Constantine did find Movarth's sleeping quarters, and more specifically, she found another thrall, which definitely caught her off guard, but she put the poor thing down quickly enough, thanks to Ulf.
I can take you. Damn you!
Strangely enough, there really wasn't much loot to talk about. A few miscellaneous items here and there, but that was about it. Anyway, now it was time for Constantine to find Alva and finally finish this coven off for good. Really couldn't let her start trying to make a new one. And find her she did, cowering in the corner of a cave. Constantine took pleasure in putting her down after what she did in Morthal. With that, the last vampire is dead, this coven is gone, and it will never return. Constantine looks upon her work and smiles. It was time to return to the Jarl and receive her bounty. As she was closing in on the exit, Helgi's ghost appeared.
Who's there?
It seemed with the coven's demise, she can finally rest peacefully. Not the happiest ending, but glad the ghost wouldn't suffer anymore. As she stepped out into the cool night air, who else was there to greet her but the militia? No way they just arrived. A bunch of cowards letting an outsider do their dirty work. At the same time, she is kinda glad they didn't join, otherwise they would have been absolutely slaughtered. Or maybe not. Movarth really was confused and senile. They may have actually been able to pull it off. Constantine returns to Morthal, where she enters the Jarl's longhouse and gives her report on what has occurred. Hopefully, this will also come with a very nice purse of gold.
Well, look at you. If only everyone acted like you did. By the 8, I didn't think he could do it. Now maybe we can put all this behind us. Take this as a token of our gratitude. There is room in my court for a new thing. It's a new but there are a few perks someone like you could make use of. However, I could only grant the title to someone who is known throughout my homeworld. You help my people, and I'll make you my Thane.
Not only did she get a nice 800 gold, it's a little less than the going rate for bounty bandits, but considering how easy Movarth was to kill, she wasn't gonna complain. She also was offered the Thaneship in Morthal, which, while it may not be the strongest province, the more allies she has, the easier things will be for her moving forward. Plus, the title came with power and no real responsibility to the people as a whole, and she was not going to turn that down. Now, that little side adventure was complete. It was high time Constantine got back on the road to return the sword to whomever ordered it. It really wasn't the most glamorous of tasks, especially considering she just killed a master vampire, but it still had to get done, so she left Morthal and headed out. The town was actually pretty close to Morthal. It was honestly just a short hike from the main city's hold. She should get there pretty quickly, and it shouldn't even take half a day. She did stumble upon a little roadside ruin, though. Her curiosity got the best of her, and she entered, only to be met by a skeleton mage. Interesting. There were no alive necromancers nearby, so either it killed its master and still lived, somehow, or someone resurrected the thing and cut it loose. If it was the former, then so be it. If it was the latter, that's impressive. And it really was a dinky little roadside ruin. There wasn't much in the terms of loot, but she did find the conjurer who probably brought the thing back to life. What's interesting is the conjurer was dead, so most likely he lost control and the skeleton mage killed him. How the skeleton mage then was able to stay alive, she's not really sure. Conjuration magic still isn't her strong suit, so she needs to jot that down in her memory and kind of come back to it later. As Constantine ran towards the town, she let her mind wander about her most recent adventures. The whole debacle with the companions was interesting, and she was still trying to stay away from Whiterun and have to officially take up the Harbinger mantle. And the College of Winterhold held a lot of promises. But in her dreams, she just kept seeing Helgen. Why, of all places, Helgen? She was also still on the hunt for the Dark Brotherhood. It's become an obsession for her at this point. She's not even sure she wants to fully join yet, but the skills they could teach her, she just had to find them. She entered town isn't the right word, more like a camp. It's mostly actually just a mine, and she looked around for anyone. Seeing nobody, though, she entered the mine.
Well, look what we have.
She found the customer,
Another wizard.
but they had an interesting reaction.
What? No, but... I see now. My daughter Adara, she's gonna get a sit-down later. So, you need to leave now. Go.
This was a prank by a child? How did
Magic is nothing.
What? Constantine had to go speak with this kid. This is a wild story. The mom wasn't kidding, though. The kid fessed up to it immediately and explained that she could do magic, although had no control of it, and asked if Constantine could take her away to college.
Mama doesn't like when I do magic, but I can't help it, I swear.
Constantine was dumbfounded. What is she supposed to say to a kid basically asking to move away? So she did the only reasonable thing and said maybe when she was older. Well, the child hated that, and then somehow summoned a whole-ass Frost Atronach. Constantine can't even do this. She immediately drew her sword, fearing that the Atronach was going to attack, but it just stood there and did nothing. Considering it safe, she went and spoke with the child again.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
The child claimed she had
Please,
no idea
I'm
how
not
to do
alone.
it, although
Maybe you
Constantine
can help
believed
me.
most likely when she had
You would do that?
overt
That's
negative
great.
feelings,
Thank you.
she's
Come
probably
on,
able
let's
to
go.
drag things out of oblivion, but honestly, who knows? Conjuration's not her strong suit. That being the case, though, a child can summon an Atronach. They need to go to the college to learn how to control themselves. So they decide to go back into the mine and speak with the mother. Back inside, the
Need
mom
something?
seemed not fully
did,
on
did
board
she?
with her child being
What's
sent off to
going on?
Winterhold, but after some conversation, she agreed,
don't
seeing
know.
how happy it would
You
make her
think that's
daughter.
normal? It's evil, I
Constantine
tell
had
you.
to smile. It reminded her a lot of how her and her mom would interact with each other. She really should write her at
College
some
of
point.
Winterhold. Really? Magic is nothing but trouble. Nords don't like magic much. It's hard for many of the people here to understand. But honestly, just want my daughter to be happy. Well, what am I supposed to do? I understand.
Mother, will I go to the college in Winterhold? Really? Are you sure?
Yes, I am.
And with that, this has now become a bring a sword to a person mission, and it's turned into babysitting.
Thank you.
Constantine
You're the
is
best. I can't wait to
not a
learn from the mages in
babysitter,
Winterhold.
so
Well,
she's just
this is
gonna
it then.
try to
Look
get
after
this
yourself,
kid to
Dara.
the college as
You better come
safely
back
and
to
quickly
me.
as possible,
You hear?
dump her off,
Thank you.
and move on with her
Thanks
day,
for
because
everything.
ugh.
So stay safe. Bye, Mama.
The plan was simple enough. They'd head to Morthal, take the carriage back to Winterhold, and bring the child to the college to begin her training. Really, Constantine just needed to make it to Morthal. Once they got on the carriage, everything would be fine. And, much to Constantine's amusement, the plan actually worked. They made it to the carriage with no interruptions, and they were on their way to Winterhold. Having arrived, Constantine could taste it was almost done. The kid would not stop talking about magic and her desire to learn on the carriage ride. Now, don't get her wrong, Constantine appreciated the exuberance, but good lord, the kid could talk. Whoever was about to become her tutor was going to get an earful. She honestly hoped it was Phineas, considering the girl's ability in conjuration magic, and she laughed at the image of Phineas being lectured about conjuration magic by a 10-year-old, and that thought popping in her mind, she got a good giggle out of it. The pair arrived at the front of the college, where Feralda was waiting to test the
Good to see
girl.
you again.
Constantine tried
tell
to
me,
explain what the
the
child
college
could
is no
do,
place
but
to raise a child.
Feralda didn't care. She had to see it to believe it.
Oh, I would
The
be
girl
most impressed
couldn't
to see
seem to summon the Atronach again, so Constantine did what Constantine does best. She pissed the child off and made her throw a tantrum, which got her to summon the Atronach. So Constantine kinda
I'm
fixed
sorry.
it in the end.
I don't know what to do. You're mean. I hate you. Ah!
By the gods, I don't even know what to say. Well, I think you'll be a superb addition to the college. Welcome, apprentice.
This is great. Wow, thanks.
Come with me. Mirabelle will be waiting for you.
Her errand was finally over. Took a bit longer than expected, but it was over. Alright, time to go talk with Sergius and just get this done with. She was not looking forward to dealing with the old man.
Enchanting services. The local Nords may
Entering the
not
college, she found the old man and told him what had
care
happened.
of.
And he didn't care. If he wasn't such a good enchanter, she would have slit his throat for the disrespect.
Whatever her name is.
Come to think of
there's
it,
work
she
to be done.
might still do it anyways.
So, until next time.
I wonder if the librarian at that Cyrodiil leaves all the cleaning duties to a single apprentice.
Tired, frustrated, and exhausted, she headed back to her quarters to get some sleep. In the morning, she was gonna head for Solitude. It had been a while since she'd been at the museum, and she really needed to finally put some stuff away that she'd been collecting. Having woken up, she had that same dream pulling her towards Helgen. She was honestly just going to ignore it for now. She really just needed to return to the museum and put some of her things away. She was also going to pretend that whatever that earthquake was didn't actually happen, and she's going to try to get off this bridge as soon as possible. Having found the carriage driver in his usual station, drinking in the tavern, she hired him to take her to Solitude. He admittedly seemed a little pissy this evening about having to finish his drink, but hey, a job's a job, and he's not going to turn it down. Back in Solitude. She missed the city. The run-up was always fun, and the massive stone walls were always a sight to behold. Now, it was just time to head to the museum. And she actually would have made it to the museum if she wasn't stopped by an overly ecstatic priestess of Mara.
Mother guides me to those flickering souls who are yet to cast themselves on the fire for tomorrow's utopia.
What is she even talking about? Why is she talking to Constantine?
I, her most devoted servant, need you to believe in the goodness of your heart, in love.
Constantine was getting very annoyed at this point, until the goddess Mara started speaking to her. What?
Which she wishes to ascend. There is a terror of minds and ideas forming in the West. A congliage of antipathy and repressed hatred is nearing its sum. If this horde transpires, then neither the restraints of distance nor time will thwart the canker that will be birthed there. I make this plea to you, special child. Meditate between the opposites and seek resolution in the chaos. I will help whenever I can, but my light is weak. However, even the faintest flame can act as a beacon against the background of deep night. That flame will appear to you in a maze of dark when you most need it.
Constantine is so incredibly confused right now. Nothing the priestess or Mara is saying is making any sense to her. Go west. Like, what? What west?
Beset by men, gods, kings, and ideas, keep a clear eye. Keep your head above water when you reach that realm. The tides of want can drown any who venture too far from the shore.
It seemed once the trance was over, the priestess doesn't even know what happened. And to an extent, neither does Constantine. So that's when the big burly figure next to the priestess decided to almost accost Constantine. He should be a little more careful with his words.
To yourself, almost word for word that of Jayana. Forgive me. Our travels have put me in a hastened mood.
At least he apologized once he found out that Constantine wasn't some evil wizard trying to kill the priestess.
You're both in on?
Though he also seemed just as confused as the two.
Looks like you're serious, which worries me a lot more. The closest I can come to answering your visions is that we had just hailed from Evermore, which may be that west you want. If you're dead set on taking voyage there, then a merchant who has a route between that hinterland kingdom and Skyrim should be resting at Markarth. Word of warning, if you care to listen. The Reach isn't a place you want to risk your neck just on the visions of a zealous priestess.
Okay, so Constantine now needs to head to Evermore on the behest of the Aedra Mara. Right. Why? What? Constantine is so incredibly confused. Why are the Daedra reaching out? Why are the Aedra reaching out? she has no idea. She's not going to think about it. She just wants to enter the museum and do her job. It was nice to see the museum entrance again. It had been a while, and she always appreciated its grandeur. Once she placed the items, she would take a quick walk around the museum before she left. She wanted to see what had been displayed and just kind of get a sense of where things were. Before that, though, it seemed Arian had left a bunch of notes on multiple different artifacts scattered throughout the workstation, so she picked them up, logged them, and would go to try to find them whenever she had the chance. She then headed for the storage that had everything that she had shipped over the past many days, picked it all up, went over to the magic table that Arian had set up that can magically put things in the museum where it needs to go. She activated it and waited. She had to wait a while, but finally the table let her know that everything was complete and that the museum now held around 322 displays. There was no way she was going to see all the displays in one go right now. She just wanted to see some of the main stuff. So that's what she did. She packed up all the belongings that weren't able to be put anywhere in the museum, stuffed them in a chest, and went on to explore. Her first stop was the armory. This is where all the different armor types and weapons that she collected would be displayed. It was pretty bare for the time being, but she imagined with time and a little effort, it would look absolutely magnificent upon completion. While she did attempt to find most of the weapons and armor, she thought that it might be best if she could also make them and go from there. She then entered her personal armory. This is where she would put any cool weapons or otherwise that she had that couldn't be displayed anywhere in the museum. She also had a couple of things she wanted to place around, and so that's what she did. Finishing that, she returned to the armory and gazed upon the sword collection. It was meager for now, but once complete, it would be the best damn collection in all of Skyrim. She next wanted to check out the main Hall of Heroes. This is where all the priceless artifacts were placed on display. She really wanted to see where Arian had placed and set up the armor of Ysgramor, and she was not disappointed with how it looked at all. She had to give it to Arian. She didn't know if he was part of the Thalmor or not, but when it came to putting stuff up and making things look nice, he was top-notch.
Oh, good day, my friend. Did you hear the news? The museum has grown to such a degree that we are going to start to capitalize on our success in ways other than through patron generosity. Well, I was speaking to Gisli the other day, and she let slip that her brother, Erica, is actually in quite a lot of financial debt. Well, it seems his business has been ill-affected by the war, yet he's been continuing to spend money beyond his means to keep up appearances. Gisli has had enough of his attitude and has kicked him out of their house. Well, in an effort to make up the debts, she has opted to sublet the lower level of their home to a renter. And I have opted to purchase the use of the space as a gift shop for the museum. I have a few sources where we'll be able to have various gallery-themed memorabilia made to sell to the visitors to commemorate their time at the museum. All while making a tidy little profit, hopefully, which will continue to fund our various endeavors. Yes, I'm quite excited about it. It should be set up by now. Go and have a look. I'll have more items commissioned for production when it is warranted.
Ah, good day, my friend.
Constantine wasn't admittedly so sure about this whole gift shop idea.
Oh my.
But if it brought in extra revenue, which would then allow the purchase of more artifacts, it was probably worth it. So she would have to go and check that out at a much later date. She did not have time to be dealing with gift shop stuff. Honestly, Arian should really be dealing with that. She's out and about finding artifacts and trying not to die.
Ah, good day, Mike. A group of mercenaries came through town and sold their spoils, and my contacts informed me of a rare item amongst... I thought you may want to use it, or perhaps place it on display.
That was nice of Arian's contact to inform him about the artifact. Constantine put it up in its specific place, and then went towards the east wing to start with the Daedric artifact wing. Granted, there was only one thing there, but she still wanted to check it out. As she entered, she saw the beautiful blue glow of the Clavicus Vial mask display. The rest of the exhibit, well, admittedly, it just looked really bare, but once it was filled with that blue glow, it would look stunning. Constantine's next stop was what she called the miscellaneous treasures room. There was no real rhyme or reason for where things were or why they were in certain locations, but they were all interesting and unique treasures, and there were a lot of displays. It could honestly take Constantine years to fill this up, but she was up to the task. She truly wanted to see this museum flourish, and, if possible, make this the best museum in all of Nirn. Her next stop was the area for all the fallen empires. Well, really for the two, Falmer and the Dwemer. There was not much here. She really hadn't explored much of either, so she didn't have any interesting or unique artifacts. But she imagined as she delved deeper and deeper into crypts and into ruins, that would change and that room would come alive. It would look awesome. Finally, Constantine entered what was probably her favorite place in the entire museum, the library. This is where she was able to display all the rare and first edition books that she found, as well as all the treasure maps that she found. This was going to be her favorite display. She wanted to put as many first edition copies of books that she could find. She wanted to fill this place up. It was stunning and beautiful, and Arian did just a wonderful job just creating the entire atmosphere of the library. Constantine really wasn't one to stay in one place for a long time, but seeing the museum come together, she thinks she's going to stay in Skyrim for a long while. And with that, the mini tour is done, and this is actually where we're going to leave Constantine for now. There was so much more that happened in her adventures, but putting it all in one video would have just diluted it. But rest assured, you will see the rest of this adventure play out soon, dear viewer. Little sneak peek though, Constantine has a run-in with a rather nasty Draugr, and a very large eye. I hope you enjoyed the mini tour, and over time we will get to see the museum progress. I know she didn't show you every room, but hey, some things gotta be kept secret for just a little bit longer. At the 15 episode mark, the first 15 videos will also be put into one large video and uploaded for your viewing pleasure, so I hope you'll enjoy that when it drops. I also hope that you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace!